3 years under the containment protocols had changed everything. The proud human fleet was now a shadow of its former self. Gray warships that once patrolled the stars now sat in pieces on junkyard moons. The soldiers who had served on them found new jobs, smaller jobs. Jobs that made them feel like ghosts of who they used to be. Sergeant Kang Ji-woo hated her new life. She had been a combat specialist on the battleship Fury of Earth. She had trained for years to fight, to protect, to serve. Now she worked on a patrol vessel called the Quiet Sky, escorting council inspectors from one human colony to another. Her crew was small. Engineer Oh Man-soo was the oldest, a man of 55 with gray hair and hands that knew every part of a ship's engine. Communications officer Shin Ye-jin was the youngest, barely 23, with bright eyes that had not yet learned to look defeated. Today, they were taking a Solari inspector to the colony of New Bizen. The inspector spent most of the journey complaining. The human ship was too warm. The food was too strange. The crew was too loud. Ji-woo wanted to throw him out of an airlock. Instead, she smiled and nodded and said, "Yes, honored inspector. We will try to do better." This was her life now. Smiling at people she hated. Pretending to be grateful for chains. On New Bizen, a man named Han Min-jae was having a very different kind of day. Min-jae was an astronomer. He worked at the colony's observation station, a small building on a mountain where the air was thin and the stars were bright. His job was simple. He watched the sky and recorded what he saw. Most nights, he saw nothing special. Stars being born, stars dying, galaxies spinning slowly in the darkness. The universe was beautiful, but it was also boring when you had been watching it for 20 years. But tonight was different. Tonight, he saw something impossible. It started as a tiny flicker at the edge of his equipment's range. A pattern in the cosmic noise, so faint that any other astronomer would have missed it. But Min-jae had spent his whole life listening to the whispers of space. He knew the difference between random noise and something real. This was real. He spent 3 hours analyzing the signal. His hands were shaking by the time he finished. The pattern was not natural. It was not a star or a planet or any known phenomenon. It was a message. No, not a message. A warning. Min-jae reported his findings to the Council Observer on New Bizen. The Observer, a member of the Morvith Collective, listened with what might have been interest or might have been boredom. It was hard to tell with crystalline beings. "You believe this signal is artificial?" the Observer asked. "Yes," Min-jae said. "And I believe it comes from beyond the galactic rim." The Observer was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, and its voice was cold. "There is nothing beyond the rim. Your equipment is faulty. Your conclusions are wrong. Do not speak of this again." Min-jae wanted to argue. He had proof. He had data. But arguing with the council was not allowed. Not anymore. He went home that night feeling like he had swallowed stones. But Min-jae was not the only one who had noticed the signal on Earth. In a secret laboratory hidden beneath a mountain, Dr. Sojin was working on forbidden research. The council had banned most of humanity's advanced technology, but Sujin was not the kind of woman who followed orders. She had hidden copies of her most important work. She had kept studying, kept experimenting, kept pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Her laboratory received data from listening stations across human space. Most of it was useless. But one night, a pattern appeared in the noise. The same pattern that Min-jae had found. Sujin recognized it immediately. 30 years ago, before the council, before the containment protocols, Sujin had studied something called the Precursor Archives. These were fragments of knowledge left behind by ancient species. Beings who had lived and died before the current galactic civilizations even existed. Most of the archives were incomplete. damaged by time and neglect. But some fragments remained readable. One fragment spoke of a species called the Devours. The records described them as nightmares made real. They were beings that consumed not just planets, but the very fabric of reality. They fed on space itself, leaving nothing behind but emptiness. They had nearly destroyed the galaxy once, millions of years ago. A coalition of precursor races had driven them away, using weapons that modern science could not understand. But the records also contained a warning. The Devourers were not destroyed. They were only sleeping. And one day, they would wake up. Sujin looked at the signal from beyond the rim. She felt cold fear spreading through her body. "They are coming back," she whispered to the empty room. She needed to tell someone. But who would believe her? The council had dismissed Minjai's report. They would dismiss hers too. They were too proud, too certain of their own power. They could not imagine that something might exist that was stronger than them. But there was one person who might listen. Admiral Park Do-hun was still living on Volantis Prime, still pretending to be a goodwill ambassador. He spent his days in meetings that meant nothing, smiling at aliens who saw him as a pet rather than a person. But at night, when he was alone, he worked on something secret. Humanity had not really surrendered all their weapons. The warships that were supposed to be destroyed had been hidden instead. In asteroid belts and abandoned moons, in places where council observers never looked, the proud fleet waited. Their crews had been told to go home, but many had refused. They lived on their ships in secret, training, preparing, hoping for a day when they would be needed again. General Baek Taiwo had organized everything. He was old now, nearly 80, but his mind was still sharp. From a hidden base on a frozen moon, he commanded what remained of humanity's true military power. "We will be ready," he had promised Do-hun. "When the time comes, we will be ready." Now, reading the secret message from Dr. Sujin, Do-hun realized that the time was coming sooner than anyone expected. He called Yoon Hana to his quarters. She arrived quickly, her face full of questions. Do-hun showed her Sujin's message. He explained what the signal meant. He told her about the Devourers, about the ancient warnings, about the death that was coming from beyond the rim. Hana was silent for a long time. "The council will not believe us," she finally said. "They will say we are lying. They will say we are trying to trick them into lifting the protocols." "I know," Do-hun replied. "That is why we are not going to tell them." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Then what are we going to do?" Do-hun smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just found a purpose after 3 years of emptiness. "We are going to wait," he said. "We are going to let the Devourers come. We are going to let the council see them with their own eyes. And when the galaxy is burning and the proud species of the council are screaming for help, we are going to offer them the one thing they never wanted." He leaned forward, and his eyes were bright with a fire that had been sleeping for too long. "We are going to offer them humanity. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, the darkness was moving. Ships that had slept for millions of years were waking up. Hunger that had waited since before human beings existed was growing stronger. The Devourers were coming home. And the galaxy that had tried to chain its only hope had no idea what was about to happen. The Devourers came to the Solari Dominion first. The colony of Bright Hope was a beautiful world. 7 billion Solari lived there, in cities of white stone and crystal that stretched toward the sky. It was a center of art and learning, a place where children played in silver fountains and elders taught the wisdom of 10,000 years. It died in 4 hours. The Devourer ships did not look like any technology the galaxy had ever seen. They were black, massive, and wrong. They seemed to bend the light around them, to eat the very fabric of space. They moved without engines, without any source of power that sensors could detect. They simply existed, and wherever they went, nothing else could. The Solari Defense Fleet engaged them at the edge of the system. 300 warships, the finest vessels of the Dominion, faced the Devourer vanguard. Admiral Vel, one of the most respected commanders in the galaxy, led the charge. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Every ship was destroyed. Every crew was killed. Admiral Vel's last transmission was a scream of pure terror that echoed across every communication channel in the sector. Then the Devourers reached Bright Hope. They did not bomb the planet. They did not invade it. They consumed it. The black ships surrounded the world like a swarm of insects, and they began to feed. Piece by piece, atom by atom, they took apart everything that existed. The cities crumbled. The oceans vanished. The air disappeared. In the end, there was nothing left but a hole in space where a planet used to be. 7 billion souls, gone in an afternoon. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Every species heard the reports. Every world saw the recordings. Fear became the only emotion that mattered. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in history, every representative was present. Even species that had not attended meetings in centuries sent their voices to the Great Hall on Valantis Prime. The Morvith Collective spoke first. Their crystalline bodies were pulsing with colors that humans had learned meant distress. "We have calculated the probability of survival," they said. "Based on current data, the chance of any species surviving this invasion is 3.7%. Panic filled the room. Representatives shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate military action. Others argued for evacuation, for running to the farthest corners of the galaxy, and hoping the Devourers would not follow. In the middle of the chaos, a hologram flickered to life. President Choi Yoonji stood before the council. She was wearing a simple gray dress, and her face was calm. She did not look afraid. "I understand that you are scared," she said. Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. "You should be. What attacked the Solari is something beyond anything we have faced before. It is old, it is powerful, it is hungry, and it will not stop until every living thing in this galaxy is dead." The room fell silent. 3 years ago, you came to us with chains," Yoonji continued. "You called us dangerous. You called us violent. You said we could not be trusted with power. Perhaps you were right. Humans are dangerous. We are violent. We do things that more civilized species would never consider." She paused, and something like a smile touched her lips. "But right now, that is exactly what this galaxy needs." The Solari representative, her face still marked with tears for her fallen people, stood up. "What are you saying, human? You want us to free you? After what we did?" "I am saying that humanity will fight," Yoonji replied. "Not for revenge. Not for power. Not because we want anything from you. We will fight because that is what we do. We will fight because somewhere, somehow, we decided that survival is not enough. Living matters. Freedom matters. And no creature, no matter how ancient or powerful, has the right to take that from us." Admiral Park Dawn stepped forward on Valantis Prime. He had been watching the council in person, standing at the edge of the room like a shadow. Now he walked to the center, and his presence commanded attention. "I have 67 warships hidden in this sector alone," he said. "General Beek Taiwu has more than 200 across human space. Our crews have been training in secret for 3 years. We are ready." The Morvith Collective pulsed with surprise. "You violated the protocols. You kept your weapons." "Yes," Dohan said simply. "We did. You can punish us for that later, if any of us are still alive." There was a long silence. Then the Solari representative spoke again. "What do you need from us?" Dohan smiled. It was not a kind smile, but it was real. Everything you have." The joint fleet assembled at the Kellis Nebula, a swirling cloud of gas and dust that provided natural cover from Devour sensors. Human warships arrived first, emerging from their hiding places like ghosts becoming solid. Council vessels followed, ships from 12 species that had never fought together before. Doan took command. It was not a decision made by vote or discussion. The other admirals simply looked at the human fleet, at the grim determination on human faces, and they stepped aside. Sergeant Kan Jiwoo was there, aboard the Quiet Sky. The little patrol vessel had been retrofitted with weapons that the Council had banned. Engineer Oh Man-soo had worked for 3 days without sleep to install them. "These guns will probably blow up the first time we fire them," Man-soo admitted. "But they will take a lot of enemies with us." Communications officer Shin Ye-jin was monitoring enemy movements. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "Devour fleet approaching. 200 ships. They will reach us in 6 hours." Jiwoo gathered her crew. There were only 12 of them, 12 humans on a ship built for 50. But they were enough. "Today we show them what humans are made of," she said. "Not the polite humans who smiled and bowed for 3 years. The real humans. The ones who conquered Earth, who survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed us. The ones who looked at the stars and said, 'Those are ours too,'" her crew cheered. It was not a loud sound, but it was fierce. The Battle of Kellis Nebula began at dawn, by Earth time. The Devourers had never faced anything like the human fleet. Council ships were elegant, beautiful, designed for efficiency and grace. Human ships were ugly, brutal, built for one purpose only, to survive and to kill. When a human ship took damage, it did not die. Its crew sealed the breaches with their own bodies if necessary. When systems failed, engineers crawled through burning corridors to fix them by hand. When weapons ran out of power, Marines in armored suits jumped across the void to board enemy vessels. Jiwoo led one such boarding party. She and 3 other soldiers cut their way into a Devourer ship and fought through corridors that seemed to be made of nightmare. The Devourers themselves were terrifying, beings of darkness and hunger that moved like liquid shadows. But Jiwoo was not afraid. She was angry. She fought with fists and feet when her weapons failed. She screamed war cries that had been old when her ancestors built the first cities. She killed and killed until her arms could barely move. And when the Devourer ship died, ripped apart by explosives that her team had planted, she jumped back to her own vessel with 2 seconds to spare. General Baek Tai-woo unveiled humanity's secret weapon at the battle's climax. Ships designed not for elegant combat, but for something the galaxy had never seen: ramming. Human vessels accelerated to impossible speeds and crashed directly into Devourer hive cores, the centers of their ships where their consciousness lived. It was suicide. Every ramming ship was destroyed, every crew killed. But the Devourer ships died with them. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it was over, humanity had lost 40 ships and 2,000 soldiers. The Council forces had lost more than 100 vessels. But the Devourer vanguard was destroyed. For the first time in millions of years, the Devourers had been stopped. In the ruins of the battlefield, surrounded by the wreckage of ships from 13 species, Admiral Park Da-hong broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. "This is just the beginning," he said. "They will come back. More of them, stronger than before. But today, we proved something important. We proved that they can be killed. And if they can be killed, they can be defeated." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quiet but filled with iron certainty. "Humanity will not rest until every last Devourer is dead. Join us or get out of our way. But do not try to chain us again, because we are the galaxy's only hope now, and we intend to prove it." The victory at Kellis Nebula brought the galaxy 3 weeks of hope. Then the Devourers returned, and hope died again. The second wave was 10 times larger than the first. 1,000 ships emerged from the darkness between galaxies, spreading across the stars like a plague. They had learned from their first defeat. They adapted. Human ramming tactics were countered by energy shields that vaporized incoming ships. Boarding parties found themselves trapped in corridors that shifted and changed, leading soldiers in circles until they ran out of oxygen. Colony after colony fell. The Morvith Collective lost their homeworld on the 15th day. 200 billion crystalline beings died as their planet was consumed. The survivors scattered across the galaxy, refugees with nowhere to go. Admiral Park Dohan pushed his fleet to the breaking point. They fought battle after battle, winning some, losing more. Each victory cost ships they could not replace. Each defeat brought the Devourers closer to the heart of civilization. By the end of the first month, the joint fleet had been pushed back to the inner systems. Earth itself was preparing for siege. Yunhana had not slept in 4 days. She was working with Morvith intelligence operatives, analyzing every piece of data they had about the Devourers. There had to be a weakness, a pattern, something they could exploit. She refused to accept that this enemy was truly invincible. On the 32nd day, she found something. Deep in the precursor archives, in fragments that had been dismissed as myths and legends, there was a story. It told of the first Devourer War millions of years ago. When the ancient races had faced this same enemy, the precursors had not simply fought the Devourers. They had understood them. The Devourers were not invaders from another galaxy. They were natives of this one. They had lived in the Milky Way since before the first stars formed. They were predators, apex hunters of a universe that had been young and wild. Other species evolved, built civilizations, developed technology. The Devourers watched. They waited. And when the galaxy was full of life, they fed. They had done this before. Many times. Every few 100 million years, the Devourers would wake, consume everything, and return to sleep. It was a cycle as old as time itself. But the last time, something different happened. The precursor races built a weapon. They found a way to hurt the Devourers, to drive them away, to force them into sleep before they finished their feast. The weapon still existed. It was hidden on a dead world at the center of the galaxy. Waiting for someone to find it. Hana brought her discovery to Admiral Dohong. If we can reach that world, we can end this war, she said. Duhan looked at the star charts. The path to the galactic core was blocked by the main Devourer fleet. Any ship that tried to reach the weapon would have to fight through hundreds of enemy vessels. It would be a suicide mission, he said quietly. Yes, Hannah agreed. It would be. Doan was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars were cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Devourers were gathering for their final push. Then I will lead it myself, he said. The volunteers came quickly. There was no shortage of humans willing to die for a chance to save the galaxy. Sergeant Kan Ji-woo was among the first. She had been promoted to lieutenant after the Battle of Kellis, and then to captain after leading the defense of New Bizan. Her ship, the Quiet Sky, had been destroyed in that battle, but she had survived. She always survived. I am not staying behind while others fight, she told Doan. My place is on that mission. Engineer Oh Mansu volunteered as well. He was 60 now, old for a soldier, but his hands still knew machines better than anyone alive. Someone needs to keep the ship running, he said with a shrug. Might as well be me. Communications officer Shin Ye-jin refused to be left behind. She had grown during the war, becoming calm and steady in the face of terror. You will need someone to send the final message, she said. If we succeed, the galaxy should know. The biggest surprise was Dr. M. Sujin. She appeared at the briefing with a small bag of equipment and a determined expression. "The weapon will need to be calibrated," she said. "I am the only person alive who has studied the precursor archives deeply enough to understand how it works." Dohan tried to argue. Sujin was 73 years old. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She had no business on a combat mission. Sujin smiled at him. "Admiral, I have been building the weapons that keep humanity alive for 50 years. I have watched my inventions kill more people than I can count. If there is a chance that one of my choices can finally save lives instead of ending them, I am taking it." There was no arguing with her. There never had been. The ship they chose for the mission was called the Indomitable. It was not the largest or the fastest ship in the fleet, but it was the toughest. It had survived more battles than any other vessel, taking damage that would have destroyed any other ship, and somehow continuing to fight. The crew was 300 volunteers. Every one of them knew they were probably going to die. Before the launch, President Choi Yoon-ji broadcast one last message to Earth. She stood in her office, wearing her usual gray dress. Behind her, through the windows, the blue curve of humanity's homeworld glowed in the sunlight. "My people," she said, "we have been called many things by the galaxy. Dangerous, violent, reckless. We have been chained and shamed, and told that we are not worthy of the stars." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was strong. "Today, our recklessness is the galaxy's shield. Today, our violence is its sword. Today, we send our best into the darkness, knowing they may never return, because that is what it means to be human. We do not give up. We do not surrender. We fight and we die, and we hope that our deaths will mean something." Tears were streaming down her face, but her voice did not waver. "To the crew of the Indomitable, I say this: you carry the hopes of 200 billion human beings with you. Every man, woman, and child on every world we have ever called home is with you in spirit. We believe in you. We are proud of you. And whatever happens, your names will be remembered forever." She raised her hand in a salute. "Go now. Save the galaxy. Show them what Terrans are made of." The Indomitable launched that night, Earth time. Behind it, the combined fleets of humanity and the Council prepared for their final stand. They would hold the line as long as possible, giving the mission ship time to reach its goal. Admiral Park Doan stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur into streaks of light as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. Beside him, Yoon Hana was reviewing the mission plan for the 100th time. In the engine room, Oh Man-soo was whispering prayers to machines that had carried humans through countless battles. On the communications deck, Shin Yejin was recording messages to families that might never receive them. And in the medical bay, Captain Kang Ji-wo was sharpening her combat knife. It was an old knife, given to her by her father when she joined the military. He had told her that every soldier needed something to hold on to when the world was falling apart. She held onto that knife now, feeling its weight, its RELNESS. The long night had begun. And at the end of it, either the galaxy would be saved, or nothing would exist to remember that it had ever been threatened. The journey to the galactic core took 7 days. 7 days of fighting through Devour patrols, dodging sensor nets, and watching the darkness close in from every side. By the time they reached the precursor world, the Indomitable had lost half its crew. Admiral Park Dawn stood on the bridge with his left arm wrapped in bandages. A Devourer boarding party had nearly taken his arm off during the third engagement. The doctors had wanted to put him in the medical bay. He had refused. His place was here, on this bridge, until the very end. The precursor world was beautiful in a terrible way. It was a perfect sphere of metal and crystal, orbiting a red dwarf star that was slowly dying. There was no atmosphere, no life, no movement. It had been dead for millions of years. "Take us in," Dohan ordered. They landed on a platform that seemed designed for ships much larger than theirs. Around them, the ruins of an ancient civilization stretched to the horizon. Buildings that had once reached toward the sky now lay broken and scattered. Roads that had carried millions of beings were cracked and empty. Dr. Sujin led a team into the depths of the world. Captain Kang Ji-woo commanded the security detail. They walked through corridors that glowed with faint light, past machines that still hummed with power after all these years. The weapon was waiting for them at the center. It was not what they expected. There was no cannon, no bomb, no device of obvious destruction. Instead, there was a chamber filled with crystals, arranged in patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them directly. In the middle of the chamber was a simple pedestal, and on the pedestal was a single sphere no larger than a human fist. Sujin approached it carefully. She had studied the precursor archives for decades, but nothing had prepared her for this. "It is not a weapon," she said slowly. "It is a choice." The sphere contained information, knowledge left behind by the ancient races. As Sujin touched it, the knowledge flowed into her mind. She understood. The Devourers fed on a specific dimensional frequency. It was the same frequency that enabled faster-than-light travel, the same energy that powered the drives of every ship in the galaxy. The precursors had discovered a way to sever that frequency, to cut it off entirely throughout the galaxy. If the weapon was activated, the Devourers would die. Their minds were tied to that frequency. Without it, they could not think, could not move, could not exist. But neither could anything else that relied on faster-than-light technology. Every ship, every colony, every civilization would be stranded. The galaxy would be broken into millions of isolated pieces. Species that had spread across the stars would be trapped on their current worlds, unable to travel, unable to communicate. It would take centuries to rebuild. Civilizations might fall. Billions might die. Sujin contacted President Choi Yoonji through a secure channel. She explained what the weapon would do. There was a long silence. "Do it," Yoonji said. "If it is the only way, do it. We will survive the consequences. We always have." But even as she spoke, Han Minjae was working on something else. The astronomer had spent the war studying the Devourers. He had analyzed their biology, their behavior, their patterns. And he had found something. "The frequency is too broad," he said urgently. "But I can narrow it. I can tune the weapon to affect only the Devourers, to target the specific wavelength of their neural patterns." Sujin looked at his calculations. They were brilliant. They were also incomplete. "Someone will have to calibrate the weapon manually," she said. "Someone will have to stay behind and adjust it in real time. The energy released will be lethal." Minjae went pale. He had not thought of that. Above them, the Indomitable was fighting for its life. Devourer ships had found them, surrounding the precursor world like wolves around wounded prey. Engineer Oh Manzu was keeping the engines running through sheer force of will. Communications officer Shin Ye-jin was coordinating the defense, shouting orders as weapons fire shook the ship. On the bridge, Admiral Doan watched his crew die one by one. Every explosion, every scream, every fallen body was a weight on his soul. But he did not waver. He could not. Too many people were counting on him. In the weapon chamber, Sujin made her decision. "I will stay," she said. "I am old. I have lived a full life. And I am the only one who understands the precursor technology well enough to make the adjustments." Ji-woo tried to argue. Minjae offered to take her place. But Sujin silenced them with a look. "Tell my students the final exam is cancelled," she said with a small smile. "Now go. You have a galaxy to save." They left her there in the crystal chamber, surrounded by machines that were older than humanity itself. She was alone, but she was not afraid. She had spent her whole life building things. Now, at the end, she would build something that mattered. Jiwoo led the team back to the ship at a run. They launched with devour fire exploding all around them. Omansu pushed the engines beyond their limits, beyond anything they had been designed to do. The ship screamed through space, leaving the precursor world behind. In the chamber, Sujin began her work. She connected herself to the precursor systems, feeling their ancient power flowing through her mind. She saw the galaxy spread out before her, saw every star and planet and ship. She saw the devourers, their hungry minds reaching toward everything that lived. And she began to calibrate. The weapon fired. It was not an explosion. It was a wave, a pulse of energy that spread outward at the speed of light. It passed through ships and planets and stars without touching them. It was invisible, intangible, harmless to anything that was not a devourer. But to the devourers, it was death. Across the galaxy, in the middle of battles and sieges and feeding frenzies, the devourers simply stopped. Their ships went dark. Their bodies crumbled into dust. Their screaming, hungry minds fell silent. At Seoul, where the combined fleet was making its last stand, the defenders watched in amazement as the enemy fleet died around them. Ships that had been seconds away from destroying them drifted harmlessly, empty and cold. On the bridge of a damaged cruiser, General Baek Tai-woo fell to his knees. He was 80 years old, and he had never cried in battle before. But he cried now. On the indomitable, Admiral Park Dawn felt the moment of victory wash over him. He sagged against his chair, exhaustion finally claiming him. Around him, his crew was cheering, embracing, celebrating survival. But Dawn could not join them. He knew what the victory had cost. They found Sujin's body later, when a recovery team returned to the precursor world. She was sitting at the control pedestal, her eyes closed, a peaceful expression on her face. The crystals around her had turned from clear to pure white, drained of all their power. She had given everything, and the galaxy would remember. The war was over. The devourers were gone, truly gone this time, their kind erased from existence. The survivors gathered at Volantis Prime, the same hall where humanity had been given chains 3 years before. But everything was different now. The Solari Dominion spoke first. Their representative bowed deeply to President Choi Yoonji, a gesture of respect they had never shown to any human before. "We were wrong," she said. "We called you dangerous. We called you violent. We tried to control you because we feared what you might become. But you became exactly what the galaxy needed. You became our salvation." The Morvith Collective added their voice, speaking in harmony. "The containment protocols are abolished. They will be recorded in our histories as a mistake, a reminder of what happens when fear replaces wisdom." President Eunji accepted their apology with grace. She did not gloat. She did not remind them of the suffering they had caused. She simply nodded and spoke of the future. "We are all children of the same stars," she said. "Let us stop fearing each other. Let us start building something worthy of those we have lost." Admiral Park Dawn retired after the war. He went to New Bizen, where Han Min-jae taught him to read the patterns in the stars. Some nights, they would sit together in silence, watching the darkness that no longer held terror. Captain Kan Ji-woo was given command of a new ship, the Indomitable II. She led the first joint species exploration mission, pushing beyond the known galaxy to see what else was waiting in the darkness. Engineer Oh Man-soo wrote a book about the war. It became required reading at every military academy in the galaxy. He spent his final years teaching young engineers the machines were more than metal, that they had souls if you knew how to listen. Communications Officer Shin Ye-jin became the first director of the Joint Species Communication Initiative. She dedicated her life to making sure that the species of the galaxy would never stop talking to each other. On Earth, a statue was built in honor of Dr. Imsujin. It showed her standing at a control panel, her hand reaching toward the stars. The inscription at its base was simple. She gave tomorrow to the stars. And in the void between galaxies, where the devourers had once waited, there was only silence. The darkness was empty now, cleansed of the ancient hunger that had threatened all life. Humanity had proven itself, not through conquest, not through domination, but through sacrifice and courage and an unbreakable will to survive. The galaxy had tried to chain them. Instead, humanity had saved them all. And in the stories that species would tell for millions of years to come, one truth would always remain. When the universe faced its darkest hour, when hope seemed lost,